Old Man Rabbit's Thanksgiving Dinner by Carolyn Sherwin Bailey. Old Man Rabbit sat at the door of his little house eating a nice, ripe, juicy turnip. It was a cold, frosty day, but Old Man Rabbit was all wrapped up, round and round and round, with yards and yards and yards of his best red wool muffler, so he didn't care if the wind whistled through his whiskers and blew his ears up straight. Old Man Rabbit had been exercising, too, and that was another reason why he was so nice and warm. Early in the morning, he had started off, lippity-clippity, down the little brown path that lay in front of his house and led to Farmer Dwyer's corn patch. The path was all covered with shiny red leaves. Old Man Rabbit scuffled through them, and he carried a great big bag over his back. In the corn patch, he found 2 or 3 fat red ears of corn that Farmer Dwyer had missed, so he dropped them into his bag. A little farther along, he found some purple turnips and some yellow carrots and quite a few russet apples that Farmer Dwyer had arranged in little piles in the orchard. Old Man Rabbit went in the barn, squeezing under the big front door by making himself very flat. And he filled all the chinks in his bag with potatoes, and he took a couple of eggs in his paws, for he thought he might want to stir up a little pudding for himself before the day was over. Then Old Man Rabbit started off home again, down the little brown path, his mouth watering every time his bag bumped against his back, and not meeting anyone on the way because it was so very, very early in the morning. When he came to his little house, he emptied his bag and arranged all his harvest in piles in his front room. The corn in one pile, and the carrots in one pile, the turnips in another pile, and the apples and potatoes in the last pile. He beat up his eggs and stirred some flour with them and filled it full of currants to make a pudding. And when he had put his pudding in a bag and set it boiling on the stove, he went outside to sit a while and eat a turnip, thinking all the time what a mighty fine old rabbit he was, and so clever, too. Well, while Old Man Rabbit was sitting there in front of his little house, wrapped up in his red muffler and munching the turnip, he heard a little noise in the leaves. It was Billy Chipmunk, traveling home to the stone wall where he lived. He was hurrying and blowing on his paws to keep them warm. "Good morning, Billy Chipmunk," said Old Man Rabbit. "Why are you running so fast?" "Because I am cold and I'm hungry," answered Billy Chipmunk. "It's going to be a hard winter, a very hard winter. No apples left." "I've been looking all the morning for an apple, and I couldn't find one." And with that, Billy Chipmunk went chattering by, his fur standing out straight in the wind. No sooner had he passed than Old Man Rabbit saw Molly Mouse creeping along through the little brown path, her long gray tail rustling the red leaves as she went. "Good morning, Molly Mouse," said Old Man Rabbit. "Good morning," answered Molly Mouse in a wee little voice. You look a little unhappy," said Old Man Rabbit, taking another bite of his turnip. "I've been looking and looking for an ear of corn," said Molly Mouse in a sad little chirping voice, "but the corn has all been harvested. It's going to be a very hard winter, a very hard winter." And Molly Mouse trotted by out of sight. Pretty soon, Old Man Rabbit heard somebody else coming along by his house. This time it was Tommy Chickadee, hopping by and making a great to-do, chattering and scolding as he came. "Good morning, Tommy Chickadee," said Old Man Rabbit. But Tommy Chickadee was too much put out about something to remember his manners. He just chirped and scolded because he was cold, and he couldn't find a single crumb or a berry or anything at all to eat. Then he flew away, his feathers puffed out with the cold, until he looked like a little round ball. And all the way he chattered and scolded more and more. Old Man Rabbit finished his turnip, eating every single bit of it, even to the leaves. Then he went in his house to poke the fire in his stove and to see how the pudding was cooking. It was doing very well indeed, bumping against the pot as it bubbled and boiled and smelling very fine indeed. Old Man Rabbit looked around his house at the corn and the carrots and the turnips and the apples and the potatoes, and then he had an idea. It was a very funny idea indeed, different from any other idea Old Man Rabbit had ever had before in all his life. It made him scratch his head with his left hind foot and think and wonder, but it pleased him, too. It was such a very funny idea. First he took off his muffler, and then he put on his gingham apron. He took his best red tablecloth from the drawer and put it on his table, and then he set the table with his gold-banded china dinner set. By the time he had done all this, the pudding was boiled, so he lifted it, all sweet and steaming, from the kettle and set it in the middle of the table. Around the pudding, Old Man Rabbit piled heaps and heaps of corn and carrots and turnips and apples and potatoes. And then he took down his dinner bell that was all rusty because Old Man Rabbit had very seldom rung it before, and he stood in his front door and he rang it very hard, calling in a loud voice, "Dinner's ready! Come to dinner, Billy Chipmunk and Molly Mouse and Tommy Chickadee." They all came, and they brought their friends with them. Tommy Chickadee brought Rusty Robin, who had a broken wing and had not been able to fly south for the winter. Billy Chipmunk brought Chatter Chee, a lame squirrel, whom he had invited to share his hole for a few months. And Molly Mouse brought a young gentleman field mouse, who was very distinguished-looking because of his long whiskers. When they all tumbled into Old Man Rabbit's house and saw the table with the pudding in the center, they forgot their manners and began eating as fast as they could, every one of them. It kept Old Man Rabbit very busy waiting on them. He gave all the currants from the pudding to Tommy Chickadee and Rusty Robin. He selected juicy turnips for Molly Mouse and her friend, and the largest apples for Billy Chipmunk. Old Man Rabbit was so busy that he didn't have any time to eat a bite of dinner himself, but he didn't mind that, not one single bit. It made him feel so warm and full inside, just to see the others eating. When the dinner was over and not one single crumb was left on the table, Tommy Chickadee hopped up on the back of his chair and chirped, "3 cheers for Old Man Rabbit's Thanksgiving dinner! Hurrah, hurrah!" They all twittered and chirped and chattered, and Old Man Rabbit was so surprised that he didn't get over it for a week. You see, he had really given a Thanksgiving dinner without knowing that it really and truly was Thanksgiving Day. The First Thanksgiving by Albert F. Blaisdell and Francis K. Ball. All through the first summer and the early part of autumn, the Pilgrims were busy and happy. They had planted and cared for their first fields of corn. They had found wild strawberries in the meadows, raspberries on the hillsides, and wild grapes in the woods. In the forest just back of the village, wild turkeys and deer were easily shot. In the shallow waters of the bay, there was plenty of fish, clams, and lobsters. The summer had been warm, with a good deal of rain and much sunshine, and so when the autumn came, there was a fine crop of corn. "Let us gather the fruits of our first labors and rejoice together," said Governor Bradford. "Yes," said Elder Brewster, "let us take a day upon which we may thank God for all our blessings and invite to it our Indian friends who have been so kind to us." The Pilgrims said that one day was not enough, so they planned to have a celebration for a whole week. This took place most likely in October. The great Indian chief, Massasoit, came with 90 of his bravest warriors, all gaily dressed in deerskins, feathers, and foxtails, with their faces smeared with red, white, and yellow paint. As a sign of rank, Massasoit wore round his neck a string of bones and a bag of tobacco. In his belt he carried a long knife. His face was painted red, and his hair was so daubed with oil that Governor Bradford said he looked greasy. Now, there were only 11 buildings in the whole of Plymouth Village, 4 log storehouses and 7 little log dwelling houses. So the Indian guests ate and slept out of doors. This was no matter, for it was one of those warm weeks in the season we call Indian summer. To supply meat for the occasion, 4 men had already been sent out to hunt wild turkeys. They killed enough in one day to last the whole company almost a week. Massasoit helped the feast by sending some of his best hunters into the woods. They killed 5 deer, which they gave to their pale-faced friends that all might have enough to eat. Under the trees were built long, rude tables on which were piled baked clams, broiled fish, roast turkey, and deer meat. The young Pilgrim women helped serve the food to the hungry redskins. Let us remember 2 of the fair girls who waited on the tables. One was Mary Chilton, who leaped from the boat at Plymouth Rock. The other was Mary Allerton. She lived for 78 years after this first Thanksgiving, and of those who came over in the Mayflower, she was the last to die. What a merry time everybody had during that week. It may be they joked Governor Bradford about stepping into a deer trap set by the Indians and being jerked up by the leg. How the women must have laughed as they told about the first Monday morning at Cape Cod, when they all went ashore to wash their clothes. It must have been a big washing, for there had been no chance to do it at sea, so stormy had been the long voyage of 63 days. They little thought that Monday would afterward be kept as wash day. Then there was young John Howland, who in mid-ocean fell overboard but was quick enough to catch hold of a trailing rope. Perhaps after dinner he invited Elizabeth Tilley, whom he afterward married, to sail over to Clark's Island and return by moonlight. With them, it may be, went John Alden and Priscilla Mullins, whose love story is so sweetly told by Longfellow. One proud mother, we may be sure, showed her bright-eyed boy, Peregrine White. And so the fun went on. In the daytime, the young men ran races, played games, and had a shooting match. Every night the Indians sang and danced for their friends, and to make things still more lively, they gave every now and then a shrill war whoop that made the woods echo in the still night air. The Indians had already learned to love and fear Captain Miles Standish. Some of them called him Boiling Water because he was easily made angry. Others called him Captain Shrimp on account of his small size. Every morning the shrewd captain put on his armor and paraded his little company of a dozen or more soldiers. And when he fired off the cannon on Burial Hill, the Indians must have felt that the English were men of might thus to harness up thunder and lightning. During this week of fun and frolic, it was a wonder if young John Billington did not play some prank on the Indians. He was the boy who fired off his father's gun one day close to a keg of gunpowder in the crowded cabin of the Mayflower. The 3rd day came. Massasoit had been well treated and no doubt would have liked to stay longer, but he had said he could stay only 3 days, so the pipe of peace was silently passed around. Then, taking their presents of glass beads and trinkets, the Indian king and his warriors said farewell to their English friends and began their long tramp through the woods to their wigwams on Mount Hope Bay. On the last day of this Thanksgiving party, the Pilgrims had a service of prayer and praise. Elder Brewster preached the first Thanksgiving sermon. After thanking God for all his goodness, he did not forget the many loved ones sleeping on the hillside. He spoke of noble John Carver, the first governor, who had died of worry and overwork. Nor was Rose Standish forgotten, the lovely young wife of Captain Miles Standish, whose death was caused by cold and lack of good food. And then there was gentle Dorothy, wife of Governor Bradford, who had fallen overboard from the Mayflower in Provincetown Harbor while her husband was coasting along the bleak shore in search of a place for a home. The first Thanksgiving took place nearly 300 years ago. Since that time, almost without interruption, Thanksgiving has been kept by the people of New England as the great family festival of the year. At this time, children and grandchildren return to the old home. The long table is spread, and brothers and sisters, separated often by many miles, again sit side by side. Today, Thanksgiving is observed in nearly all the states of the Union, a season of sweet and blessed memories. Thankful the Turkey by Charlotte D. Conover. 300 years ago, near the new settlement of Watertown, lived a little girl named Hope Allen. Her father worked in the forest, so they lived a long way from the village. The only playmates that Hope had were her pets and an Indian boy, Big Crow, who worked for her father. One of Hope's favorite pets was a fine big turkey. She called him Thankful because, she said, he should be thankful that he is alive. Out of a large family of wild turkeys, Thankful is the only one that lived. One day when Hope came out to feed Thankful, she was crying. Thankful came to her with his usual welcome, gobble, gobble. He stretched his long neck to take the corn from Hope's hand. Hope stroked his feathers gently. "My poor Thankful, what shall we do?" she cried. "Mother says we must eat you for the feast of Thanksgiving." Big Crow was chopping wood nearby. He looked at Hope in surprise, for he had never seen her cry. "Little sister, do not cry." He put down his axe and came over to her. "Why do you say we must eat Thankful?" "Mother's brother, my Uncle Edward, is coming here from England," Hope explained. "He will be here for the feast of Thanksgiving, so we must have a good feast. You know what a hard year it has been." Big Crow nodded his head. True, the harvest was poor. "There have not been many wild turkeys this year either," Hope went on. "Father says if he does not find one today or tomorrow, we must kill Thankful. But, oh, Big Crow, Thankful is my pet." And Hope began to cry again. "Perhaps Big Crow find wild turkey," said the boy. "Do not cry, little sister. Is not your name Hope?" But the 2 days passed, and no wild turkeys could be found. Uncle Edward came on Thanksgiving morning. He and Mistress Allen had much to say to each other. While they were talking, Master Allen went out to find the turkey, Thankful. He would have to get it ready to be cooked. Hope was outside trying to find Thankful, too. She wanted to say goodbye to her pet, but Thankful was nowhere about. She called and called, but he did not come. "Maybe Big Crow knows where he is," said Master Allen, but they could not find Big Crow either. "Hope, are you sure you do not know where that turkey is?" asked Master Allen. "I know you will tell me the truth. I don't want to kill him any more than you do." "Truly I don't know, Father," Hope answered. "I have not seen him all morning. But, Father, may I be a little glad that we can't find him?" Her father laughed. "Yes," he said, "but what shall we do? What will your mother say when she knows there is no meat for Thanksgiving dinner?" Big Crow came along the path from the woods just then. He was carrying a basket. "White Father," said Big Crow, "we can have fish for our feast of Thanksgiving." He held out the basket. Inside were 4 big fish. "Where did you get them, Big Crow?" asked Hope. "I caught them in Forest Lake," the boy said. "Why, that lake is 3 miles from here," exclaimed Master Allen. "You must have got up early this morning." When Mistress Allen came out to the kitchen to cook the turkey, she found her family busy cleaning fish. "What are you all doing here?" she asked, "and where's the turkey?" "We can't find Thankful," Hope said, trying not to smile. Master Allen told his wife the story. "Well, it is too bad that my brother cannot have turkey," she said. "But I did not want to kill Thankful either. Thank you for the fish, Big Crow. They will help." Mistress Allen cooked the fish, and what a feast they had. Fried fish, potatoes, turnips, squash and onions, baked apples, fresh bread, Indian pudding of cornmeal and molasses, pumpkin and mince pies. Then, if anyone could eat more, there were nuts and more apples. They were in the middle of dinner when there was a loud noise outside. Gobble, gobble. Hope jumped from her chair. "Why, that sounds like Thankful when he's really hungry." She ran to the door and opened it. Thankful walked right in the door and straight up to Hope. "Gobble, gobble," he said. "Gobble, gobble." Uncle Edward got up from his chair. "What is this?" he asked. "Some new kind of chicken?" "Why, Uncle Edward, have you never seen a turkey?" Hope could hardly believe it. "No, of course not," said Mistress Allen, laughing. "We never saw turkeys either until we came here, Hope." Uncle Edward walked around and around Thankful. "A strange bird," he said at last. "But very good to eat," said Master Allen. "That is interesting," Uncle Edward said. Then they all told him the story of Thankful, and of how they had planned to have turkey for the Feast of Thanksgiving. "By the way, Big Crow," Master Allen had a sudden thought, "maybe you know where Thankful has been today." Big Crow looked at his plate and was quiet for a minute. Then he looked at Master Allen. "White Father," said Big Crow, "maybe Thankful was caught in the big hollow tree back of barn. He goes there sometimes." "Maybe he was," said Master Allen, but his eyes were laughing. "Well, I am very glad that we did not eat Thankful," Uncle Edward declared. "I would much rather have him here, alive, since I never saw a turkey before. Brother Will," he turned to Master Allen, "do you think I could buy some of these birds to take back to England?" "That is a fine idea," Master Allen said. "Tomorrow we shall ask in the village. Perhaps someone has turkeys for sale." That evening, before she went to bed, Hope said to Big Crow very quietly, "I am glad Thankful and I have a kind Indian brother, Big Crow. I promise never to ask my brother who tied Thankful in the big hollow tree." Big Crow almost smiled. "How do you know someone tied Thankful?" he asked. "I looked in the hollow tree after dinner and saw a rope still hanging there," Hope laughed merrily. "Now Thankful has 2 reasons for his name."
Happy Easter by Kurt Wiese. "Go and get me some eggs," said the mother rabbit to her 2 children. "Hurry," she said. "There is only 1 day left to color the eggs and hide them in people's gardens." So the children started off. They hurried, as they were told, down the hill to where the hen lived. "Good morning," said the rabbits to the hen, who sat on her nest with her feathers all spread. "Good morning. Could we have some eggs?" "We are in a hurry because there is only 1 day left to color the eggs and hide them in people's gardens." First the hen said no, but the rabbits pleaded and pleaded, till at last the hen said, "All right, you can have these. I have been sitting on them for 3 whole weeks, and not one will hatch." So she helped the rabbit children to put the eggs in their baskets, and then they went home. Meanwhile, at home, the mother rabbit had prepared everything to color the eggs, and soon the whole family was painting eggs with the colors which had been left by the last rainbow. They sat and painted and looked at their work. And then it happened. Listen! There was a crickle here and a crackle there, and the noise came from the eggs. Pop! It went, and the egg in the mother rabbit's paw burst open, and out came a chicken. Pop, 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 pop from everywhere, and all the eggs cracked open, and out of every one came a chicken, colored like the egg it came from. Just then, the hen came up to the door of the rabbit's house to see how the eggs would look in color, and there she saw all the little chickens. So she said, "Cluck, cluck," and the chickens all came running to her, and she led them home. The rabbits looked after them, and there were no Easter eggs that year. But, oh, such beautiful chickens!
The Bunny Who Found Easter by Charlotte Zolotow. One day a little bunny woke up from a long nap alone under a tall elm tree. He heard the silence of the woods around him and wanted other rabbits like himself for company. "Can you tell me where I will find other rabbits?" he asked a sleepy old owl in the elm tree. "Other rabbits," said the owl. "Why, there are always rabbits at Easter." "Where is Easter?" asked the little bunny eagerly. But the old owl had dozed off to sleep again in the bright sun. It must be some place to the east, thought the bunny, and he set off searching. It was a hot summer day. The leaves in the trees stood as still as a painting against the blue sky. The bunny found a pool of water, and down in the water silvery trout flashed by. But there were no bunnies about. Then this can't be Easter, he thought, and went on his way. He came to a field full of daisies. There was a hot summer daisy smell over the field, and the bunny's nose twinkled. A big, slow bumblebee hummed by. But in all that whiteness of daisies, there was no whiteness of bunnies like himself. "This isn't Easter," the bunny said, and he went on. Once he was caught in a summer storm. The sky looked like night. Suddenly, a streak of lightning, the color of stars, forked through the sky. Great rumblings rolled from one end of the world to the other. The rain came down so fast that the bunny could hardly see the mountain laurel just ahead. Slowly, the rumbling rolled by. Slowly, the sky brightened. Slowly, the rain stopped. He could see the mountain laurel with wet, shining leaves, each flower cup filled with one sparkling drop of rain. But he couldn't see any other bunnies shaking the rain off their wet, white fur. "Not Easter," he said sadly, and hurried on his way. Summer was nearly over. The leaves on the forest trees began to turn brown and gold and red. Dead leaves crackled under the soft rabbit hops of the little bunny who was looking for Easter. He stopped under a tree to rest, and a round, shiny red apple fell down and startled him. It smelled of autumn and crispness. He took a bite with his two front sharp teeth. When he had crunched the apple to its seeds, he looked around and sighed. There wasn't another bunny to be seen. One day it began to snow. Soft, white flakes drifted down from the sky, and the air was sharp and cold and still. When he hopped through the white drifts, he left little dark footprints in the snow. But no matter which way he hopped, his footprints never crossed other bunny footprints. The little bunny was alone in a world without rabbits. There were birds, little black sparrows like ink drops in the snow. Brown squirrels leaped about on the bare branches of the trees. Once he saw a whole family of deer slipping into the forest at dawn. But there wasn't another long-eared, pink-nosed, white furry rabbit like himself to be seen. This can't be Easter yet, he thought, and his loneliness grew inside of him. That night, the bunny curled up in a hollow tree to keep himself warm out of the wind and sharp air. When he woke up next morning, there was something different. It smelled. He quivered his nose and smelled hard. It smelled of wet, growing things. It smelled of greenness and warm, soft sunlight. The little bunny felt sure he would come to Easter soon. In the forest, the black twigs had little, tight-curled green buds. The birds were singing high up in the trees as the bunny hopped ahead looking for Easter. Suddenly, he saw something in the muddy earth that made him stand perfectly still with excitement. Crossing in front of him, and going into the woods where he had never been, were little rabbit paw prints on the ground. He followed the paw prints very carefully down a hidden path. There, in a clearing, he saw someone small and white resting on a mossy bank. It was another bunny. She had long ears like himself, and eager, bright eyes like himself. The little bunny was so happy to find her, he completely forgot about Easter. Hopping back through the forest with her, he showed her all the places he had seen on his search. At last they came to the tall elm tree where he had first awakened to find himself alone. But now his loneliness was gone. The two bunnies were very happy together. Soon they had a whole family of little rabbits, tiny, white, sleepy things with long, sweet ears and small, wet noses. The bunny's heart throbbed with happiness at this wonderful, earth-smelling, sunlit, bunny-filled world. "Aha," said the old owl when he saw the bunny's family. "Didn't I tell you so? At Easter time, there are always rabbits." The bunny felt his little bunnies around him, and the earth blooming beyond them, and all things growing. And he understood at last that Easter was not a place, after all, but a time when everything lovely begins once again.